How to respond wisely to people who criticize you. Stoic Wisdom opening. There's one thing that's almost certain. When someone disrespects you, your first instinct is to fight back, to push, to prove that you're not someone to be messed with. In that moment, adrenaline surges, your heart pounds, your voice sharpens, and you feel as though if you stay silent, you'll be seen as the loser. But what if I told you that this is the trap? That every time you react on impulse, you don't reclaim respect. You hand over control of your emotions to someone else? And what if I told you there's a higher way, a stronger way, a wiser way to confront contempt without yelling, without bowing your head, and still keeping your peace? Stoicism doesn't teach you how to retaliate. It teaches you how to become untouchable, not through violence or coldness, but through reason and self-command. And today, I want to take you on that journey, a journey not for those who just want to feel better, but for those ready to become better. We will go through 7 practical lessons from Stoic philosophy, not lofty theory, but tools to radically change how you respond to disrespect. These lessons will help you stay grounded when attacked, keep your dignity when belittled, and most of all, stay calm when the world tries to make you lose your temper. But before we begin, I have an invitation. It's not for everyone. It's only for those ready to reclaim ownership of their emotions. Right now, beneath this video. My worth does not depend on anyone's opinion. Write it not just to display it, but to imprint it. It's a sign that you're not just listening, you're choosing. And when you choose that, you've taken a step into a power no one can take away. Stoic principle number 1, pause before you react. Silence is not weakness. It's the result of seeing what impulsiveness leads to. There's one thing people are exceptionally good at in modern society: provocation. They speak without thinking. They use their tone as a weapon. They wait for the precise moment when your guard is down to strike, not with fists, but with words, with attitude, with a cold, dismissive glance. And you know what happens next. Your instinct, hardwired for survival, launches you into fight mode. You want to react instantly. You want to cut them off, raise your voice, show them that you are not the kind of person to be disrespected. But it's right there, in that moment, that you've been pulled into the arena. You are no longer in control. You are reacting. And that's exactly what Stoicism wants you to see. Anger is the cheap tool others use to drag you down to their level. Anyone can explode. Anyone can throw words like daggers. But not everyone can pause. Not everyone can remain still in the storm. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." That line is not about weakness. It's about strength. Because to not react, you must possess an inner force that others can't see. And when you react impulsively, you hand over your emotional steering wheel. You become a puppet to provocation. And the worst part is this: you might win the argument, but lose your inner peace. You might silence the other person, but awaken a battle inside that lasts for hours. Remember this: an impulsive reaction may win a moment. A mindful response preserves your energy for a lifetime. Stoics don't say you're not allowed to feel anger, but they remind you, don't let anger steer the ship. In the moment you're about to explode, pause. Take a deep breath. Not because, not to avoid, but to reclaim control. That is the moment you step out of the emotional performance and return as the director. That is real power. Picture this. You walk into a room and someone says something rude. Everyone turns to see how you'll respond. You look them in the eye. You don't frown. You're not angry. You simply stay silent. Not the kind of silence that comes from being hurt, but the kind of silence that comes from knowing you don't have to lower yourself to respond. No one expects that silence, and that's what unsettles them. No reaction means no game. No game means no winner. And you know what? In the emotional power game, the one who refuses to play is the one who's already winning. Try it just once. Instead of replying, look at them and stay silent. You'll see, silence can shake the whole room. You don't need to scream to protect your dignity. You only need to hold it with composure. And then you walk away, not carrying anger, not pushing anyone down, and not lowering yourself either. Stoicism teaches that between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space lies freedom. Freedom to choose who you will be. Freedom to decide what's worthy of your energy. In practice, what does this mean? It means you don't have to answer right away. You can say, I'll respond when I'm ready. You can say, I hear what you're saying, but I don't agree. And sometimes you don't need to say anything at all, because your calm is already a complete answer. Think back to the times you reacted too quickly and then spent the whole day drenched in regret, exhaustion, and unease. That's not victory. That's disorientation. The first lesson, and perhaps the most important lesson in Stoicism, is learning to pause. Not to become weaker, but to become stronger. Not to avoid, but to choose. Because the one who can pause before reacting is building an invisible armor. One no sword can pierce. That armor has a name, awareness, and you can start forging it at the very next moment of provocation. Stoic principle number 2, don't argue with ears that are closed. Do not cast pearls before swine. Do not burn energy on a wall. There's a kind of exhaustion heavier than physical fatigue. It's the weariness of trying to explain yourself to someone who has already decided they don't want to understand. They don't interrupt you, but they don't listen either. They look at you, but there's no connection in their gaze. They wait for you to finish, not to respond, but to counter. And you, unknowingly, keep going, trying to find better words, kinder words, more reasonable, more careful, more considerate. But nothing changes. That's the quiet spiral. The more you try to connect, the further they withdraw. The more you speak, the emptier you feel. That's not communication, that's self-erasure. Epictetus said it plainly. To someone unwilling to learn, your words are only echoes. This isn't arrogance, it's a wake-up call. You can't teach what someone refuses to see. You can't touch a heart that's locked. And the more you try, the more you burn yourself to warm a place that was never open. Stoicism teaches that your energy is valuable. Your peace should never be bartered away in hopeless conversations. Watch carefully. Some people you speak 5 words, and they understand 10. Others you speak 50, and they're only waiting for one to twist. They don't want to understand. They want to win. They're not listening. They're defending. And if you're not mindful, you'll walk right into that trap. Not because you're weak, but because you believe sincerity is enough. But here's a hard truth. Sometimes the more sincere you are, the more you are disrespected. Because to someone with closed ears, your honesty is just ammunition for a counterattack. And that's why you need to stop. Not because you've lost, but because you've understood. Understood this. Trying to be understood by someone unwilling to understand is a betrayal of yourself. It's like trying to push open a door from the outside, while someone has already locked it from within. You can't get in, not because you're not good enough, but because they're not open enough. Not because your reasoning is lacking, but because they've already decided not to receive. They're not listening, not because you're inadequate, but because they've chosen to shut the doors of their mind. In that situation, silence is not avoidance. It's the choice of someone who understands the rules of the game. Imagine standing in the middle of a desert, shouting into the wind. You can do it for a minute, 10 minutes, even an hour, but the more you shout, the more dehydrated you become. The longer you try to maintain a conversation with someone who isn't truly listening, the more of yourself you lose. Stoicism doesn't teach you to suppress yourself. It teaches you to know your limits. There are doors you no longer need to knock on. There are people you no longer need to prove anything to. There are conversations where walking away is the loudest message of all. They may want you to get angry. They may hope you argue. They may expect you to sink into emotional quicksand. But when you leave, quietly without pain, without needing to win, that's when confusion sets in. Because the one who controls themselves is never the one being controlled. Your decision to stop arguing doesn't mean you've become weaker. It simply means you've stopped defining your worth by your ability to convince others. You don't need them to understand for you to feel right. You don't need their validation to maintain your self-respect. You only need yourself and the clarity to see that sometimes withdrawal at the right moment is the highest form of wisdom. Some may ask, so should I never explain myself? No, that's not the message. But you must observe, is the other person listening with their heart or just guarding with their ego? And when you see that their ears are closed, you should close the door too. Not to sever ties, but to protect your energy. Everything you say should be a seed, not gasoline on a fire. If the soil is barren, don't plant. If the wind is too strong, don't shout. Right silence is a firm statement. I will not play a game with no reward. The Stoic doesn't need to win every argument. They only need to win themselves, every time they're tempted to lose their composure. Stoic principle number 3. How they treat you speaks about them, not about you. Insults only have power if you give them permission. Have you ever lost a night of sleep over one cruel comment? Replaying every word, every tone, every glance. Asking yourself, why did they say that? What did I do wrong? Do they really think I'm worthless? And then comes the feeling, smallness, anger, hurt, as if your dignity has been slapped. But pause. Ask yourself, does that person even remember saying it? Maybe not. Maybe it was just a passing remark, a flash of ego, or worse, they didn't think at all. They just spoke, and you were the one who kept it. You kept it because you gave it meaning. You granted it the power to hurt you. But Epictetus offers a simple yet painful truth. It's not what happens that hurts you, it's your judgment of it. You suffer not from the words themselves, but from how you interpret them. The same insult. One person shrugs it off, another laughs, another carries the pain for weeks. So the issue is not in the sound, but in how you let it define you. Stoicism teaches your reaction is your reflection. When someone is rude, ungrateful, or condescending, they're exposing their own inner world, a world of wounds, a world of bitterness, a world lacking maturity. That's not an accusation against you. It's a mirror held up to them. And you, if you don't realize this, you become a victim of emotional transfer. They throw out negativity, and you unknowingly receive it. But if you pause, observe, and ask yourself, what does this reveal about them? Then the insult loses its weight. It's like someone trying to fling mud at you, but you're standing far enough away that it doesn't even touch your shirt. And you don't need to jump into the mud to prove that you're clean, because your calmness is the clearest proof. When you begin to see that, you begin to take ownership. Ownership of your emotions, ownership of your thinking, ownership of your dignity. The Stoics don't deny emotion. They simply refuse to let emotion dictate action. And when you understand that, the way they treat me says more about them than about me. You take back the right to define yourself from the hands of others. You stop asking, what did I do wrong? And instead ask, do I really need to carry this? And the answer is often, no. They threw it. But you don't have to catch it. Let it pass, like waves crashing on rock. The rock doesn't argue with the sea. It simply stands, still, silent, unshaken. In real life, this means, when insulted, you don't need to react immediately. You can observe the other person, see their confusion, their lack of control, or simply their wounded ego flailing. And instead of retaliating, you take a step back, physically and emotionally, because you understand this isn't your story. It's the story they're telling about themselves. As you practice this, you'll begin to realize, when I no longer react the way I used to, that's how I know I'm starting to master myself. And that's a freedom beyond words. You're no longer easily pulled into petty arguments. You no longer feel the need to explain, to defend, or to prove your worth. Because you know, real worth doesn't need to shout. It shows itself in every response, or in the choice not to respond. And remember this, what others think about you, say about you, whisper about you, is not you. It's a map they've drawn from their viewpoint through their limitations. But you don't live in someone else's map. You live in your own reality. So don't let a careless comment drag you down. Don't let a disrespectful glance make you question yourself. Don't let a passing remark become a sentence you serve every night. Return what belongs to them, and keep what matters most, your peace. Stoic principle number 4. Clear boundaries, no confrontation needed. You have the right to say no without explanation. Here's a truth that grows louder as you grow older. If you don't set your own boundaries, others will set them for you in ways that benefit them. They'll push and you'll retreat. They'll demand and you'll yield. They'll cross lines and you'll stay silent. Until one day you look around and realize you've disappeared in everything you've tolerated. Boundaries are not distance, they are protection, and you have the right to establish them without apology. You have the right to say no without a long explanation. But why is that so hard? Because we're taught that kindness means pleasing others, that silence is wisdom, that patience is noble. But Stoicism doesn't fully agree. It says, there are things worth enduring, but there are also things that if you continue to endure them, you're not being kind, you're betraying yourself. Kindness doesn't mean letting people trample you without a response. Kindness means having clear boundaries, without cruelty. It means saying no without anger. It means standing firm without shouting. Stoicism doesn't teach you to fight with fists or sharp words. It teaches you to confront with presence, with a gaze that doesn't waver, a steady gaze that says to the world, This is the line. No yelling, no conflict, just clarity. In today's world, many people are used to violating emotional space without even realizing it. They interrupt, they impose, they call at midnight, they judge without invitation, they demand without limit. But the responsibility doesn't lie with them alone. It lies with you if you don't stop them. And to do that, you don't need anger. You need principles. A principle strong enough to keep you whole, even when others disapprove. Shift your perspective. Freedom doesn't come from being accepted. It comes from daring not to please. When you constantly try to please, you lose honesty with yourself. You say yes, while every fiber in you is screaming no. You smile to keep the peace, even as your insides twist into knots. You pretend everything's fine while your voice fades into silence. That's not peace. That's surrender. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Live by what is just, not by what pleases the crowd." And what's just, first and foremost, is what's just to yourself. You have the right to rest, the right not to reply instantly to every message, the right to skip a gathering that drains you, the right to say no to a request when you're already overwhelmed, and you don't need to justify any of it. The truth is, boundaries aren't there to push others away. They're there to keep you from disappearing. Boundaries are your way of saying, I care about you, but I also care about myself, and I don't have to choose between the two. Yes, people may see you change. They might be surprised, confused, even angry, because every time you draw a boundary, you force others to adjust their behavior. But don't let that make you back down, because what you allow to continue becomes what others assume is acceptable. Remember, you don't need to shout to earn respect. You only need consistency. A quiet person with firm boundaries can shift the energy of an entire room. They don't need to threaten. They just need to show up and not back down. And it all begins with one word. No. No. I'm not ready for this conversation. No, I don't accept the way you just spoke to me. No, I'm not okay with being constantly interrupted. No, I won't keep giving chances to a relationship that lacks respect. You don't need a long explanation. Your steadiness is the explanation. And if someone truly values you, they will learn to adjust. And if they leave, you've just cleared space for something better to arrive. Stoicism never teaches us to be rigid. It teaches us to be flexible with limits, gentle but not submissive, kind but not self-destructive. Boundaries are how you conserve energy, protect dignity, and live in harmony with yourself without losing respect in the eyes of others. So from today, stop apologizing for keeping your distance. Be proud that you're choosing to keep yourself. Part 5, Stoic Principle Number 5. Don't beg for consideration, nourish self-respect. Those who don't see your worth don't deserve your effort to convince them. There's a kind of relationship that silently erodes your self-worth, the one where you're constantly made to prove you deserve respect. You text, they don't reply. You try to improve, they ignore it. You bow your head to make peace, they grow colder, and you think, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I need to be softer, more perfect, more agreeable. But the truth is, if someone doesn't see your worth, they're not worthy of your effort to convince them. Epictetus delivered a piercing reminder. Dependence on approval places your happiness in someone else's hands. It means that every time you live for external validation, you place your mind in a locked cage and hand them the key. If they open it, you feel joy. If they stay silent, you lose sleep. If they praise, you feel worthy. If they criticize, you unravel. That's not living. That's being a hostage to perception. But you weren't born to be a reflection of judgment. You don't need to be chosen to know you're worthy. Your worth doesn't begin with how others see you, but with how you see yourself. The Stoics understood this deeply. They knew the gaze of the world shifts like the wind. Today they cheer, tomorrow they vanish. Today they call you friend, tomorrow use you as a place to deposit blame. So if you live to be considered, to be chosen, to be approved, then you'll be forced to shapeshift every day, and eventually you won't be you anymore. You'll just be a mask, molded by the expectations of others. Stoicism teaches you to take off that mask. It teaches you to live by values, not validation. And real value doesn't lie in how many people like you. It lies in how many times you've stood firm without needing anyone to stand with you. Maybe you once begged to be seen. You explained yourself endlessly, wrote long messages, bent over backwards, just to get someone to look back. But the more you did that, the more you lost what little self-respect you had left. Because their silence didn't diminish you. Your submission did. You don't need to chase. You only need to stop and ask yourself, who are you trying to convince? Someone who's no longer open? An environment that only demands but never affirms? A relationship that only exists when you're willing to bow? If that's true, then your decision to stop trying is not a failure. It's a return to yourself, a return to the dignity that got buried under too many compromises. And when you return to it, you begin to live differently. You enter a new space, one where you don't need anyone's permission to believe in yourself, where coldness no longer shakes you, where you finally understand respect can't be begged for. Respect is the natural response to someone who respects themselves. In practice, this means you stop sending messages you know won't be answered. You stop explaining yourself when you know you did nothing wrong. You stop trying to be more likable just to be temporarily accepted. And instead, you begin to rebuild yourself from the inside out. Day by day, you choose people who speak to you with attentiveness, not condescension. You choose spaces that honor your time, your feelings, your presence. You choose yourself before you ever wait to be chosen. That's the shift. From craving consideration to cultivating self-respect. A self-respect that is not arrogant, but also doesn't crumble at the sight of cold indifference. A self-respect deep enough to know when to stay and when to walk away. And when you nurture that self-respect long enough, you'll realize something powerful. The absence of those who didn't respect you isn't a loss. It's sacred space. Space to breathe again, to restore, to welcome in what truly belongs. And from that moment on, you no longer need to strive for approval because you have become the highest approval you need. Stoic principle number 6. Choose who stands beside you with intention. You're not just the sum of your friends. You are the product of who you allow to influence your mind. Not everyone who enters your life should stay. Not everyone who was once close deserves to journey with you to your next chapter. And not everyone who smiles, chats, or shares a meal with you is truly good for your mind. Because negativity doesn't always come with a warning label. Sometimes it arrives as a friend, the one who constantly complains, criticizes, sows doubt, or makes you quietly question your worth. A single comment, a well-timed sigh, a subtle shake of the head can be enough to make you shrink, withdraw, and lose momentum. But you don't notice it because you're used to them. You think, they're my friend, but you forget the person closest to you is also the one shaping you most. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "We should associate with those who make us better and keep away, as far as possible, from those who distort our soul." This isn't coldness, it's mental discipline, because you cannot keep your spirit clean if you let anyone walk in and stain it with anxiety, envy, or resentment or toxicity disguised as laughter. Face a hard truth. You cannot fly high while tethered to those who have no intention of taking off. You want to learn stillness. They want to complain. You want to improve. That they mock your effort. You want quiet time with a book. They drag you into endless gossip. And each time, you take one small step away from the path you chose, unconsciously, quietly, subtly, but consistently. And that's how you lose yourself, without realizing it. The Stoics understood this. Your environment is not just what surrounds you, it's what shapes you. And a major part of that environment is people. It's the relationships you maintain. It's the words you allow to reach you. It's the emotions you absorb day after day. That's why the Stoics offer a clear strategy. Choose who stays in your life, not by emotion, but by philosophy. Ask yourself, does this person make me better? After spending time with them, do I feel lighter or drained? Do they listen when I speak from the heart, or just wait for their turn to speak? Do they correct me with respect, or with sarcasm wrapped in the disguise of honesty? If the answers lean negative, it's time to reevaluate their role in your life. You don't need to cut them off. You don't need drama. Just pull back, reduce the time, increase the space, redirect that energy to those who lift you. Because there are people, after just one short conversation, you feel clearer, stronger, more awake. Those are the ones to keep. They don't need to be like you. They just need to respect you. And they bring a kind of energy that moves you forward, not inward. They make you want to take better care of yourself, to stay calm longer, to keep learning. They don't compete. They resonate. And most importantly, they never make you question your own worth. People like that are rare, but they exist, and you can only recognize them when you stop giving your space to relationships that are already empty. Starting today, change one thing. Don't keep friends just because they're familiar. Keep the ones who walk the same direction. You don't need the whole world to understand you. Just a few who truly align. And that's enough to stay sane in a noisy world. And you don't need to choose the person with the most in common. Choose the one who shares your principles. Because when you meet someone who respects your silence, lifts you when you're tired, and keeps their word when you're not around, you've met a gift. Cherish them. And more importantly, become that kind of person. Because when you uplift others through your presence, you attract those who live by the same inner code. Stoicism doesn't teach you to live alone. It teaches you to choose wisely, so you won't feel alone in a crowded room. And sometimes that selectivity is exactly what saves you from a life scattered by relationships that were never worth your peace. Stoic principle number 7. Become unbreakable from within. True peace isn't out there. It lives in the one strong enough not to be swept away. In this ever-changing world, everything can collapse. A relationship, a job, a plan, a dream. You can wake up one morning and everything you thought was stable suddenly isn't. And then you feel unsteady, uncertain, afraid. You reach for something, someone, hoping to feel safe again. But what if they leave too? What if everything outside of you is unstable? Then what is real? Marcus Aurelius answers with one sharp line: no one can harm you unless you allow it inside you. It sounds almost unbelievable, but it's the deepest Stoic truth. Strength is not about controlling the world. It's about controlling yourself, because you cannot stop the wind, but you can learn to hold the wheel. The storm may be fierce, but you are the one holding the inner wheel. And the one who holds the wheel well is the one who refuses to let their mind be dragged by things beyond their control. That's why Stoic philosophers always trained one thing above all: the inner world. While others rush to protect their image, their possessions, their status, the Stoic seeks stillness within, not to escape the world, but to stay centered within it, not to become numb, but to gain clarity about what truly drives their reactions. That is the difference between living and being lived by life. The person who is lived reacts to circumstances. When it rains, they're sad. When someone shouts, they're angry. When a lover leaves, they collapse. But a person who lives intentionally stands grounded in the middle of all that chaos, because they've built shelter on the inside, and they no longer need calm weather outside to feel peace within. They don't lose themselves just because others change. They don't let sharp words crack their self-belief. They may feel pain, but they don't let pain dismantle their essence. Being unbreakable doesn't mean you feel nothing. It means you feel everything, but still choose to respond with awareness. You don't follow the crowd. You're not swept up by urgency. You're not drowned by rejection. Because you understand, everything out there may shift, but how you face it is always your choice. And you always have the power to choose. From an insult, you can choose silence over rage. From a failure, you can choose learning over self-blame. From pain, you can choose healing over bitterness. And each time you choose like that, you're fortifying your inner fortress. Gradually, you stop fearing loneliness because you've learned to walk with yourself. You stop fearing rejection because you know the deepest acceptance comes from within. You stop fearing failure because you realize you can lose everything except yourself unless you give yourself away. The Stoics weren't born as warriors of steel. They forged themselves day by day through simple habits. Each morning, they asked themselves, what unwanted event might come today, and how firmly can I stay in myself? They wrote, they reflected, they recorded their emotions, and they used reason to observe themselves, rather than letting emotion run the show. They weren't perfect, but they were disciplined. They didn't eliminate sadness, but they didn't let it steal their dignity. And you can begin the same way. One day, one choice at a time. One moment where you don't react as you used to. One time you walk away from a pointless argument. One time you sit quietly with pain without fleeing it. One time you say, I'm okay, and actually mean it. Not because everything is okay, but because you are okay from the inside out. Step by step, you'll notice change. What once made you furious now only makes you smile. What once made you fall apart now only makes you quieter, deeper. What once made you want to give up now becomes the very fire that shapes your strength. And then you'll understand the deepest truth. When you master the inner world, you no longer need to conquer anyone. You just need to resist being pulled away from your essence. That is the greatest victory. That is true freedom. And that is the gift of Stoicism. Not a cold shield, but a steady heart. Not a battle against the world, but a way to remain whole within it. Not to stop feeling, but to feel deeply without shattering, unbreakable, not because you are made of stone, but because you have learned to bend, to rise, and to hold your core when everything else loses direction. And when you reach that level, no one and nothing has power to shake you again. Because true peace has never been out there. It only arrives when you are strong enough not to be swept away. Closing. Final recap. Call to community. If you've made it this far, you're not just a viewer, you're someone in the midst of transformation. You've walked this entire journey. Every lesson, every principle, every word was not meant to be heard and forgotten, but to be used as a mirror, to reflect on yourself, day by day, moment by moment. Not everyone makes it here. In a world spinning fast and loud, you chose to pause, not to give up, but to wake up, not out of weakness, but to step into a deeper kind of strength, strength from within. Stoicism never promised you an easy life, but it does promise this. You will no longer be easily shaken. It doesn't say there will be no more pain, but it shows you how not to lose yourself in it. And if there's one thing you should carry with you after this video, it is this. You may not be able to control the world, but you can always control how you choose to live in it. Take a moment to reflect. What lesson resonated with you most? What moment made you pause and think, that's me? Write it in the comments, not just so I know you're here, but so you can see yourself more clearly. Because when you write it down, you're not just expressing something, you're marking a shift within, a sentence, a line, a quiet affirmation. It could be the beginning of a calmer, stronger version of you. And if you don't know what to write, just write, thank you. One simple word, but enough to let me know you didn't just watch, you felt. You didn't just listen, you took a step, however small, on your own stoic path. And if you want to keep walking this path with me, a place where each video isn't just content, but a space for growth, for self-inquiry, for living with depth. Hit subscribe. I'm here every day, not to teach you anything new, but to remind you of what you already know, but may have forgotten in the noise. See you in the next lesson. We don't need to be perfect. We only need to be steady, one step, one moment at a time.